So today, after you have read your 3-year draft that you have selected, your completed draft, we're asking you to go through with some Post-it notes, or if you type this on a Google Doc, you could open the comment box and do this. And what we're looking for is places that could be confusing to your reader, places where maybe you have added some extra information that now when you go back and you look at it, you decide you maybe don't need to have that piece of information in there. And so the story that I chose to work on for this was the story that I did for my Wayside story. And I wrote about a teacher wanting to love her kids. And so as I'm going through and I'm reading through my school or looking through my story, one place that I noticed and then I marked was right over in here where it says Sam even let out a huge sigh of relief. And so I'm going to mark delete. Oops, sorry, I can't see it. I'm going to go ahead and mark my Post-it with delete, because when I go back and I look at my story and what's going on with that, I don't feel like this is something that I need to keep in my story. It's like an extra detail, and I notice as a writer, like sometimes I tend to ramble and go on and maybe put too many details, and the reader could get lost in that, like it's too much. So I'm just going to put, actually I'm going to put it here and write that here, that I'm going to go ahead when I revise and I'm just going to scratch that out and take that out. And then I noticed over here when I didn't have the Post-it note, I kind of clarified this verb, and it says, in that my friend, and then I started to say is where are, and I didn't like that thought, so I'm going to replace that with the word couldn't. And I'm going to go through again and look at the other things that I've written and see if there are any other places that look like it could be confusing to somebody. For myself as a writer, maybe a place where I have put like too much detail, and I want to go back and revise that because it's just too much extra. So for me, when I look, those are the only two places that I saw in this reading. So what I'm going to ask you to do is to grab some Post-its or grab the comment box on your Google Doc, and you're going to go through your draft in the same way. Think about it. Ask yourself, what would be confusing for a reader? Where are some places that you want to delete some information that you have written, or you want to take out? Maybe it doesn't really fit in your story now that you took your story to completion. And then mark the word delete on that. And then think about reading your draft for the first time. Look for any places that might be confusing for a reader. And then think about, where things that are happening in the story might be unclear, like you might need to clarify it a little bit more. And then on that Post-it note, write confusing. And then when you go back to make your revisions, and this is where, if you're doing it handwritten, the double lines come into play here. If you marked things that are deleted, you can go ahead with your pen and just mark those out. If you're doing things that are confusing and you want to clarify, kind of like I did here when I went back and reread, cross it out and then maybe change your word choice. Play around a little bit and see what makes the most sense. If you're not 100% sure, the other thing you could do, especially if you're using Post-its, is play with that section of the text on your Post-it, rewrite it maybe a couple of different ways, and then you could put it down in your notebook like as different options. And as we go through and we work on revisions, maybe one of those options would make more sense than the other as we go on.